Okay, we've heard the vision, we heard the plan, and now we're going to get wonkish here. We're going to talk about the Energiewende, and I still haven't found the right kind of expression to translate that. I think turnaround, energy turnaround doesn't quite work. Transformation of the energy.
Revolution is better, energy revolution.
That sounds better. But before we start, let me introduce the other panelists who are here. We have Professor Dr. Jürgen Kluge, who is the CEO of Haniel. And Haniel is kind of a typical German beast, I would say. The best way to describe it is that it's a family-owned private equity firm. It has, its companies have, I think, 58,000 employees worldwide. And you have something like 27 billion in euros in revenue. You ran McKinsey in Germany, and you were a honorary professor in engineering, I think.
All true.
I hope you're going to tell us about what the German industry thinks about this Energiewende, and whether you feel threatened in a way, whether you're part of that counter-revolution in Germany. We have Eicke Weber. Eicke Weber is the director of the Fraunhofer Institute of Solar Energy Systems in Freiburg, and I think it's quite appropriate that it should be in Freiburg, because Freiburg is the most sunny place in Germany, and that's saying something.
And the movement started in Freiburg.
That's true, and that perhaps explains why you're so into solar, because it works in Freiburg. Whether it works in the rest of Germany, we'll have to talk about. Also, you've lived in Berkeley,
Yes.
and I think we both lived in Berkeley at the same time. So you're part of this growing tribe of West Coast Germans. Though you have to explain me why you kind of moved from Berkeley to Freiburg, even though Freiburg is a great town, but I think Berkeley. Can talk about that. We have Benjamin Schlesinger of Benjamin Schlesinger and Associates. It's the energy consultancy, and you have in this business for 40 years. You've talked to kind of, I don't know, probably even more governments in Germany.
God, is it that long?
And I mean, but your focus is in the U.S., I think.
Yes.
And that's correct, and it's
Yes, in Europe.
Natural gas, shale gas. So I hope you're going to tell us kind of what an energy expert, an American energy expert, thinks about the Energiewende. Let's perhaps start with politics here. As I said, we have heard the vision, we heard the plan. As many of my generation, when I was 18, 19, I went to Brockdorf and I rallied against the nuclear plant there. We walked for 12 hours in the freezing cold because it was an illegal rally and all of that. And when Merkel decided, oh, it's over, I was quite surprised because I never believed it would happen. And so, could you tell me, Mr. Watts, could you tell me what changed? I mean, you had a chancellor who 3 months before had pushed through and spent a lot of political capital to extend actually the life of German nuclear plants. What happened with Fukushima? It can't just be that she had kind of a personal revelation and changed her mind.
No. Well, what happened was that the percentage points of people who were against nuclear power rose from 60% before Fukushima to 80% against after. And I've read a couple of biographies about Angela Merkel, and all biographers agree in at least 2 points. One is, she was always the best, always the first, always the brightest, and she's proven that. And second, she doesn't have a vision. She doesn't have a plan. She doesn't have an idea of what a society should look like. And that's why she's acting like a physicist. She's observing, and until she discovers which side is going to win, and she's going to take that side. And that's why in this moment she knew she had to get rid of this issue because it was destroying her chancellorship, and she did. But as I just try to explain a little bit, and Jeremy Rifkin asked me to give him some bullet points of what actually was going wrong, and I'm going to send it to him. But she's not following up with that, because that's not her, she hasn't got a vision for a fossil-free society.
Dr. Kluge, do you agree with that assessment? I mean, it sounds to me almost like, we've heard Germany is the leader of the energy revolution. I mean, and to be a leader, there has to be some kind of a plan. My impression is we kind of stumbled into this rather than having a big plan.
Frankly, I don't think so. And I would disagree a little bit. I'm a PhD in physics, and Angela Merkel is a PhD in physics. And in physics, you are trained when there's that one experiment happening that basically challenge the academic building of knowledge. It's one experiment. If it's proven, happening, and happening a second time, then you change. And those are the great moments in physics, when the complete building of the old learning collapses. And Fukushima, in my view, was one of those moments. My minor in physics in Cologne was radiochemistry, nuclear chemistry, and I did that with Professor Hell. Professor Hell was the last PhD student of Otto Hahn. So it's Otto Hahn, Professor Hell, and myself. And I was quite much in favor of nuclear power. After Fukushima, I changed my mind and had the same experience like Angela Merkel, and we should get out of it for basically two reasons. One is we are bringing into our environment radionuclides that didn't exist before, and the level is going up and up and up and up. If you go for, we are in a recycling business, and I will tell you a little bit about it. If you want to have medical equipment, knives and scalpels and other medical equipment to be used under nuclear detectors, where do you get the steel from? It's dived out of Scapa Flow, out of the German fleet that was sunk there in 1919, because in those years the level of radioactivity in the world was low, and then it increased and increased with the surface testing, with Chernobyl and the other things. And we are bringing material in our ecosystem, what we should not do. You mentioned the point with the generations. That's one reason, and the other reason is the threat, the black swan. We had a lot of discussion yesterday on military action, and if you would give me 20 military trained men, I could
Of course.
Yeah.
I could,
Greenpeace is doing it.
I could, in Biblis or in another nuclear plant in Germany, steer up a megagau. It's easy to do. What the flood wave did in Japan, you could do by simply blowing up the generators
yes.
and the power lines around it. It's doable with 20 people. It's not the airplane. That's much too difficult. And human genius is so so good in attacking that with defending technologies, you never will upset that. So those are my two arguments, and I'm completely for that turn around we did in the nuclear policy. I don't know whether many of my colleagues in the industry have the same opinion, but I came to the same conclusion immediately after I've seen Fukushima, and then you have to be consequent. Then it means out rather sooner than later.
But, I mean, what you just explained is not necessarily news. I mean, that was known before that. I mean, I'm just trying to
But the
understand
experiment happened, and it was successful in a sense, and it happened in Japan, a high technology country, and not in Russia, where some drunk guys do a few experiments at midnight on a ill-constructed graphite moderated reactor. And you had a similar experience in Harrisburg. Things happen.
But now explain us why she's not following up, why she is not leading
Can we talk
the
about that?
energy revolution.
Okay, because I want to hear from you. What is your impression? Were you surprised when Merkel announced this, or?
No, I think it was part of what was coming. It didn't take people here, I think, by surprise. We always detected a strong anti-nuclear sentiment in Germany. I don't think we really have that in this country. I think 3 Mile Island that you mentioned, which isn't too far from where I live. I haven't grown a third eye yet, so I feel grateful. 3 Mile Island, if anything, was entombed correctly, and from what we understand, cancer rates are the same 2 decades later as they were anywhere else in Pennsylvania. So if anything, 3 Mile Island proved that it could be decommissioned, after an accident safely, and I think that put a lot of fears to rest. Fukushima has had a different effect. And I still see plants, going ahead, but I think they're not moving. I think they're not proceeding in the U.S. Really for cost, cost reasons. It's so expensive, $7 billion a gigawatt. Exactly. Southern Energy, in Georgia is going to proceed with their plant. It looks like for $7 billion, and even solar, which is expensive, isn't really $7 billion a gigawatt anymore.
No, it's 2.
Well, I don't know if it's 2.
Okay, he's got the expert, yes.
Question about kind of the Ausstieg in 10 years. For the American audience, the question is that doable? I mean, are renewables that advanced? Can they replace all the nuclear plants? Do we need, let's say, new coal plants, new gas plants?
Absolutely. I think what we experience in Germany, and we have now already collected very important experience and data, is this energy revolution, the transformation of the energy system, requires a completely new thinking in all of us. The scenario to which we are heading, in my view, will be about 1/3 solar, 1/3 wind, and 1/3 so-called dispatchable renewable energy, which means water, biomass, geothermal, and if you use waves, whatever, there are a few others, So in this 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 scenario, it means that because of the feeding in of time variable energy from wind and solar, there is no place whatsoever for nuclear and coal-fired power plants. And why is this? And we have made this experiment in Germany. Simply speaking, if the wind blows and the sun shines in Germany, we cover 100% of our electricity needs from wind and solar. But in Germany, we still have a few nuclear power plants, a few coal-fired power plants who are desperate that they don't have to shut down these plants. Because you see, a wind turbine or a solar module, you can anytime disconnect, you can shut it down, you don't feed in power. But a coal-fired power plant where you have a big vessel full of steam and a nuclear power plant which doesn't want to be changed by the hour because it creates stress in the system and it shortens the lifetime, the operators of these plants are willing to pay anybody money who is just taking this excess electricity. So the effect of the negative electricity price. So in other words, any coal-fired power plant, any nuclear power plant is an obstacle for the transformation of the energy system to renewable energies. So as soon as we can get rid of them, we clear up the way for this 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 scenario. And in Germany, because we have the feed-in tariff, and up to now, let's knock on wood, it's still in place, which really accelerates this transition, because the feed-in tariff, in contrast to the stupid American subsidy systems, the feed-in tariff is the market-driven system. It gives any investor who invests in wind, who invests in solar, a solid perspective on return on investment, and this can be between 6, 8, sometimes even 12%. And where do you get a state-guaranteed return on investment for 20 years in this range? This is the secret why we have the solar revolution in Germany. So up to now, everything is on track. We are moving in the right direction, but of course, we have to prevent the old forces which want to build coal plants after the nuclear issue is hopefully out of the door. And as I said, this creates obstacles against the introduction of the renewable energy. We have to get rid of it. The only old plants which we need, or fossil plants, would be gas plants, because gas plants can be quickly modified up and down according to the needs, and you can even make combined cycle gas plants which provide heat and which have an efficiency of 80%. So for the next 10, 20 years, gas-fired plants would be the ideal bridging technology till we reach the 100% renewable energy scenario.
You said that feed-in tariffs are kind of market compatible or
Yes.
kind of market solution. Last time I read the Spiegel, which I do rarely, but I saw this piece saying solar energy has been subsidized to the tune of, I think, 100 billion euros.
That's right. Yes.
And I just want to explain to me why this the German love of solar. I mean, German climate is kind of closer to that
As
of
a matter
Alaska
of
than
fact, there is a
California.
reason that everybody talks about solar, nobody talks about wind. You know, as a matter of fact is that at the current electricity rate in Germany, 2 pennies come from wind and 1.5 pennies per kilowatt hour come from solar. So the reason they don't talk about wind is because the big power companies are now planning to put wind parks offshore, and wind parks offshore are just the opposite what Jeremy Rifkin said will be happening, because they keep the centralized power station. So there's a political reason people don't talk about wind but talk about solar. And what is really not considered is in 2011, the amount of electricity from solar was 50% of that from wind, and the amount of feed-in rate was a relationship from 2 to 1.5. So it's a myth to say solar is over-subsidized in comparison to wind. Actually, it is not at all. And we will very quickly see that solar will even reach the same amount of electricity, terawatt hours, than wind, and go on beyond this. And
I would oppose that. You have to do the most economical and ecological best solution. And in Germany, power from solar is at the end of the cost curve. It's the most expensive thing you can do.
You don't know the recent numbers.
I have the recent numbers. And when you calculate the economic impact from producing the solar panels to the end of your terawatt or whatever gigawatt hour, the ecological balance is not good either. So I would be really careful with pushing too much of the solar power in Germany. It was over-subsidized. The biggest thing we can do is efficiency. When you put money into something that is good for the environment and that is good in an economic sense, efficiency is the name of the game. We could cut down our consumption rates again by a factor of 2, and they are half of the consumption rates per capita of what the US basically spends. So every dollar, every euro spent in efficiency measures is the best spent euro or dollar. And then come the other technologies. Solar is an option, but in Germany, solar is at the right end of the option. So we should be careful that we, in the end, don't end up with the most expensive mix. It's all a question about mix. We need storage, obviously. All the ideas, I would subscribe to everything, but we should do something which is good for our people. And by now, it's good for farmers that had their old buildings filled up with solar panels, whether it's feasible or not. The sun is not shining like in Freiburg all the time in mid and western Germany. So we should come up with a mix that's economic, that's good for the people, and that's good for our planet, and not push one thing single-handed to the extreme.
I just would like to fully agree with you that energy efficiency is a first step. You know, energy efficiency is a big elephant in the room which nobody notices. But with all energy efficiency measures, we do agree that even in 2050 we still need energy.
Sure.
And for this we need really the mix of renewable energy. And as a matter of fact, solar and wind fits extremely well together, because when the wind is blowing and you have a storm, you don't harvest a lot of solar energy, and when the sun is shining on a quiet sunny day, you don't have much of wind. So solar and wind goes very well together, and this is why I say 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 is a mix of the future. And most importantly, it is true that in the past, and therefore I said you use old numbers, in the past photovoltaics was extremely expensive. Don't get me wrong, the reason that I'm talking about photovoltaics is not that I think photovoltaics will solve our energy problem, but because this is especially under political pressure right now. I am for the mix 1/3, 1/3. But photovoltaics as a semiconductor technology has a steep learning curve. Prices came down enormously. Today, as we speak, in Germany, where we have so little sunshine, electricity from your own solar panel on the roof costs you less than the electricity from the plug, from the wall plug. We have reached this, and we are continuing to come down the learning curve. Very soon, solar energy will be, today already it's less expensive than energy from offshore wind, which actually you should phase out as well, according to your own words. Offshore wind, the kilowatt hour is already today more expensive than photovoltaics in Germany, and it will continue, and in a few years beyond 2020, it will compete with nuclear, coal, and gas-fired kilowatt hours. And this is the real reality, and we are very happy that with the German feed-in law, we were able to initiate this movement, but today, the whole world is going this way. In 2011, the world installed 23 gigawatts, 23,000 megawatts of new PV, and from these 23 gigawatts, only 7.5 gigawatts were in Germany, and the rest was in the rest of the world. So the revolution has started. The prices come down because in sun-rich countries, it's just half of the rate in Germany because you have double the sunshine, and therefore we have a very bright future. But of course, just get me right. We need the full mix. We need energy efficiency. We need as well to work on our grid technology. We should introduce smart grids that people know the value of the electricity at the time when they use it. And of course, we should have as well storage, water storage, hydrogen. To produce hydrogen makes no sense if you use the normal wall plug electricity, much too expensive. But in the future, we will have more and more times when electricity is available basically free of cost. Today in Germany, photovoltaic systems are obliged to be put off the grid because there's too much electricity in the grid. And it is much better to use this electricity to create hydrogen. You can feed it into the gas pipelines. 5 to 10% hydrogen absolutely works well. And in this way, you will get a completely new type of economic solutions. And even in households, you can start to put electric heaters for your warm water system, because when the smart meter tells you electricity is 1 cent a kilowatt hour, then it should heat your warm water heater, and you don't need to pay gas for this. So the economy will change in ways which we have just started to think about, and it will happen very soon. And I really hope we in Germany give this example, which will be important for the whole world.
But I still don't get it. I mean, that may happen, what you're saying, but at the same time, why pick winners? Why don't we have in Germany kind of a source neutral or renewable neutral way of subsidizing?
We don't pick any winners. We say
most of the money goes into solar,
the mix.
I mean, which is great for you. I mean,
no, this is absolutely not true. There's more money going into wind than into solar. This is just the myth which is distributed by the interested industry. We spend more money for wind than for solar,
Well, it's a very funny thing, but there's no place on this planet which is probably less good
for solar, yes.
For renewables in general, like Germany. I mean, Germany doesn't have a lot of sun. Germany doesn't have a lot of wind. Germany doesn't have a lot of space to grow biomass. Germany doesn't have geothermal. Germany is the least likely place for the energy revolution, but nevertheless it happened. And with solar, two things. One is from the 3.5 cents per kilowatt hour. That is the feed-in tariff. This is what the consumer pays for the feed-in tariff. Only 2% is actually for the renewable feed-in itself. 1.5 cents is exemptions for big industry. We've just had a small study done for us, which has given us these numbers. When even the lignite coal industry in Germany, who are digging up the lignite, they're not paying for the renewable energy feed-in. And what we are seeing at the moment is a concerted attack against solar now. And it's also to divide the industry, and it's partly working. I mean, the wind industry is not really coming to the help of the solar industry, which is bad, because they're going to be the next who are going to be attacked. And I'm telling them they should be concerned. Second, even if for a while you over-subsidize a certain technology, I think it hasn't, but even, let's assume there has been, there may be some good reasons to do it. Because with the economies of scale, the prices go down, innovation cycles start, and it is my firm conviction that in the end we are heading towards something which is mimicking, which is imitating photosynthesis. I mean, this is what plants do pretty successfully all over this planet and in the deep ocean. They're using a way to convert solar radiation into energy that they can use, and I'm certain that we are going to do the same. But of course, we have to get on this track. And one last idea maybe as regards efficiency. You know, I've worked for the Wuppertal Institute, which is a champion of energy efficiency in Germany. But rarely have I heard the term rebound. And, well, let's ask here in the audience, who's heard of this term rebound effect? There are some, but quite only a few. Rebound means that the efficiency gains that technologically are possible are being eaten up by direct or indirect effects. Example, the average consumption of fuel of the car fleet in Germany has been 8 to 9 liters for 30 years now. Enormous improvements in efficiency. I mean, the engines which you have now are not comparable to the ones 30 years ago, but still the consumption is the same. Why? Bigger cars, faster cars, more comfort. It eats up consumption. There is a law called which was formulated by William Stanley Jevons in 1865. He's formulated the Jevons paradox because he was doing a study for the coal industry. The coal industry asked him, if efficiency of our technology improves in 1865, what impact does it have on the consumption of coal? And he formulated the law, which is still valid today, and there's no example to the contrary. Increased efficiency with the same prices means more consumption because of the effects which I've just told you.
That's right.
And that is why we have to increase efficiency, extremely important, but at the same time, we have to get the conditions right, politically, economically, socially, culturally, in order to in order to fight this rebound effect. And one way is, of course, through price mechanisms. It's the old idea of an ecological tax reform. Tax the bads, which is resource use, and not tax the goods, which is workforce. So that's what we've done in Germany for a while, but haven't followed up on that. I think it's time to renew this kind of principle. And by the way, it will also allow us to generate money, because for governments to come, and hopefully from 2013 onwards, there's going to be a new government in Germany. I may be allowed this little political slant here. But with the financial crisis, there will not be much investment possible, except if we generate new money. And we could do that via taxing of bads.
Can I step in and, first off, I agree, and this is a serious problem. Energy efficiency is the lowest cost way to reduce carbon. It just is. Electricity production is so inefficient that 2/3 of it goes up in smoke in most power plants. So if you make this building, 50% more efficient, look at all the multiplier you've saved in terms of fuel. But one thing that struck me that you mentioned, and I kind of think it's a theme here, and it's looking to Germany for leadership in this. In one sense, it is more difficult in the U.S. to move forward with renewable programs. Why? And the problem is price. Energy is very cheap here and getting cheaper because of this huge natural gas oversupply that we've managed to come up with in a very Jeremy Rifkin-like way. It wasn't the major, for the most part, with one exception. It wasn't the major energy companies. It wasn't major investors. It was just a bunch of scrappy people with pickup trucks and 30-foot rigs picking over the garbage that was left by the majors in something called the Fort Worth Basin, which turned into the Barnett Shale, which opened up, giants. And it's still basically small players, although the players are getting larger and the fields are getting cleaner, thank God. I wanted to show a couple of slides on this if I can, and I promise to actually go through about half the ones that I wanted. So take it from the top, but it's going to, yeah, good. So I have to stand here. I don't know what I'm looking at. The challenge is really expressed in BP's annual energy outlook to 2030. BP, probably has their perspective, but on the other hand, you have to deal with this. Non-OECD energy growth is, I don't know if I've got a pointer here, but you can see what's going on. Europe, EU, even the former Soviet Union, and the United States are all down basically to a non-growth world in energy. I think we can improve on that, and we're likely to, but it's the OECD world. This is what you've really got to go to work. The challenge isn't so much us, it's everybody else. Gas imports are going to grow in Germany, and the thing that concerns me, because domestic production all over Europe is declining tremendously. So what's likely to replace the nuclear is gas. It's possible. Fukushima is creating gas demand. It just is. Maybe this is a transition. Maybe it's a transition to more gas. I don't know. But right now, gas markets are tight again just because of, what you see here is the decline in nuclear production capacity availability in Japan down to nothing. And there are shortages this winter in energy. Gas is flowing in to make up for this. In the US, the shale increase has been phenomenal. It started with a bunch of scrappy people. The majors have kind of been tagging along and trying to catch up with this. But the amount of production, I don't think people realize. We still, in some parts of the country, quarrel about groundwater. If there was a groundwater problem, we'd really have some serious issues right now. The amount of, just the increment in gas production because of shale, I don't think people understand how huge it's gotten. It's as much gas as Iran is producing oil. Just the increment, just the growth. Just the growth piece is more than the EU's total gas production. It's more than Qatar's production. It's Norway and Qatar, getting close to Norway and Qatar put together. It's just the growth part because of shale. And it's created a very low price, and here's some of the reasons why this goes on. I'll just, maybe send these around. I don't want to go into the whole thing. It's all technology. It's a major, major technology play. Exports will happen. Shale resources are around. There's shale resources in Germany. The thing I wanted to get to is if gas is used to replace coal, as we are doing in this country, you get kind of an unfair advantage, but it really is a tremendous boost. Not only do you get the chemical advantage of the fact that burning gas produces about 50% of the carbon dioxide of burning coal, but you also have these coal plants like Salem up here, which is extremely inefficient. Plant is older than I am, if you can believe that. Don't. It's actually a few years younger than I am. It's in the early 50s. So you also get this efficiency advantage because, Siemens and other turbines are extraordinarily efficient, combined cycle combustion turbine. So you reduce carbon dioxide by 70% by cutting down the Salem plant, as I hope Dominion will do soon, and replacing this with a gas-fired power plant. On the other hand, if you, I went too fast, so it doesn't matter. If you replace, it's pretty obvious, if you replace nuclear with gas,
that's the point.
Then you're going in the wrong direction. You don't want to do that. You want to replace nuclear with solar.
Okay.
And replace the coal with gas.
Yes. Good.
Take the gas and replace coal because gas is dispatchable, especially if it's LNG, and it works really well with, against solar. Particularly against wind.
Yes.
As one rises and falls, gas can be thrown on. The other thing about gas is, while I'm on my favorite subject.
Not too long.
Not too long. Every time people mention gas, it's always and gas. It's and gas. Or in Texas, it's gas. Oil and gas. See, it's coal, oil, and gas. I work with the gas industry for a very long time. It is not a fossil fuel. A lot of gas is fossil fuel, but a lot of it's not. The deeper you drill, the coal stops, the oil stops. even the shale stops, but you still get gas. You still get gas. Gas, it turns out, is not really a fossil fuel. So when I hear people call it a fossil fuel, I bristle a little bit. It's a component of the Earth's mixture. You want to use it carefully. Methane, of course, is 20 times the global warming impact of carbon dioxide. So you don't want to just vent this stuff and make sure it's handled carefully. But the fact is, it's not really, a fossil fuel. It's just a different kind
Well,
of...
does it contain carbon?
Gas does contain
yes.
carbon.
Okay.
It's the least carbon intensive of the fuels, which is why burning it is advantageous to burning coal. And why I'm saying, if you're replacing nuclear with gas, you're going in the wrong direction.
Mr. Weber, what do you think is going to be the role of gas in Germany? I mean, we've seen in the US.
No, honestly speaking, we have already a quite sizable fraction of gas in the German system, but gas in Germany, it's all imported and from countries like Russia, Kazakhstan, and so on, which are really questionable. So for a transition period, let's say till 2030, till we have enough wind, solar, and all the other renewables I mentioned, gas we will need. And I think we should phase out coal. And honestly speaking, it will phase out nuclear too, simply because of the lower cost. Steve Chu, he told me in a private conversation, he is not worried about nuclear in the United States because it simply is too expensive. And actually your argument that gas is so dead cheap, which it shouldn't, you should tax it more, but still, this will help to make any investment in nuclear power plants financially not safe. And actually my prediction is, in 5 years, we will have around the world quite a few ruins of nuclear power plants which people start today, because within the course of these 5 years, photovoltaic electricity will have come down, and we will all realize that in the new energy system of fluctuating feeding in, nuclear power is completely the wrong way.
Can I just address your tax question in a limited sense? You are absolutely right. No, you're absolutely right. I completely agree that we should be taxing, but taxing carbon.
Yeah, taxing carbon.
If you tax carbon,
yes.
this will create an unbelievable amount of gas demand.
Yes, and much better than the stupid certificate system.
Well,
the certificate
right now,
system, from my view, is developing into an obstacle.
Yeah.
Because in Germany, I hear the very convincing argument, increasing wind and solar is the wrong way. It's against the climate, because increasing feeding in wind and solar electricity depresses the price of CO2 certificates and therefore reduces the force to make more energy efficient production and all the other things.
It's pretty complicated.
But of course, you could never reach the climate goals if you don't replace the energy by renewable energy. So saying we should not introduce renewable energy because it will reduce the price of certificates will not work. And one final remark to certificates. Certificates, if they would be worldwide in a completely honest system, might be an interesting approach. However, certificates will not survive if only Europe has certificates and the United States and Asia have not. So very soon, in 2 years, when this is up for renegotiating, the certificate market might implode. But the problem is, in the certificate market today, there are billions and billions of profits to be made. So we start to feel in Europe a very strong lobby which is against any fight against certificates. And I am afraid that the climate negotiations, Rio +20, they have to drive again and again against this brick wall of CO2 reductions just to keep the interest of the CO2 certificates alive. In my view, climate negotiations should change from talking about reducing CO2 to talk about introducing renewable energy, introducing energy efficiency, which we can measure by the energy content of the gross national product. This would be the positive goals for something like Rio +20.
I guess we are much too deep when I compare it to Jeremy's vision into the nuts and bolts of that discussion. Let me start with a few fundamentals again. The narrative is a thing we should strive for, and we heard a very good narrative today. And that's the vision. Most probably it's like a little bit like the two videos clips we have seen yesterday from the US and the German armed forces. That was the US version, but we will do that. and we will do it together with the industry. And I hear a little bit too much of a story, war on nuclear, war on coal, people are attacking. That's over. The leading managers of a younger generation in Germany in the companies, you don't have to convince them. They see that what we heard today, most probably in a more moderate version, is the future and our once-in-a-lifetime chance for the third revolution. That's number one. Number two, and I studied physics, there are no renewable energies. There's a law of energy conservation, so you don't have renewable energies. It starts with the wrong language. You only can transform energy from potential energy to kinetic energy, then you move something to electricity, and then you can transform electricity to heat again.
You can also not consume energy, right?
There is no renewable energy. So we have to find something that we have a scarce resource there. And the second thing, every time you transform energy to another form, you have losses. So that tells you that was the second law of thermodynamics we have heard in Jeremy's talk. So it's all about efficiency. And you have to find the most efficient way to transform your energy in something which gives you quality of life. And then think a little bit deeper, what are the sources of energy? Where does it come from? If you want to beat Jeremy, you have to be more fundamental than he is. So there's fusion. That's one source of energy. It's the sun. And everything we have here is gas, you debated that, oil, it's all made by the sun in former times, and we lived over our own means by consuming more than we produced in our lifespan, and we have to change that. It's a little bit like the financial industry where we have debts for generations and generations. Same true with energy. So that is one source, fusion. The second source is fission, nuclear fission. Happens in the Earth. Part of that the Earth is warm is due to the fact that we have radioactivity in the lower levels of the Earth. Should we use that? I already made my point. Most probably shouldn't. We should leave it where it is. And then we have a third source, which is gravitation. So the tide coming in, some sort of the wind, it's partly solar or it's partly gravitation, so we can use that. And that's it. There are no more energy sources. So in the end, it's the sun. And I would agree with you. Right. But we should use the most efficient ways to utilize that energy of the sun, and then something will come out, and it will hopefully not be ideologically driven, so I can't subscribe to the 30-30-30. Whatever comes out, what is the best mix will be the answer of our problem. And if the US decides to go on cheap gas, I guess they make a big mistake, because we will need every ton of gas for the chemical industry in the decades and centuries to come, because gas and coal is much too value worthy than we simply burn it and then have to extract it out of the atmosphere again. And carbon storage, capture and storage most probably is much too expensive, doesn't really work. It's not the easy way out that we can keep our coal plants. So in the end, we live over our means. There is no renewable energy. We have losses with every transformation. So I'm completely with Jeremy. We have to go for decentralized, smaller, grid-type energy networks, and it will be a great business for everybody who believes that that is the next S-curve and the next technology breakthrough. And frankly, we will do it, but only together with the industry, not against